CB, thanks so much. In the meantime here, let's bring into the conversation right now our friend, legal analyst, and former federal prosecutor, Neama Rahmani. He joins me. Neama, always good to see you here. So I got to ask this. I think a lot of people are kind of wondering to themselves, scratching their head. On day 11 of testimony, pretty early on in the trial altogether, the defense makes a play for a mistrial. It's swiftly denied. Why make the play? Are they throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks, or are they trying to establish some type of predicate? What say you?
Well, they're doing both. It's sort of pitch high and inside. They want to put the prosecution on their heels. This is what aggressive defense lawyers do. They go on the offense and they want to put the prosecution on the defense. Really, it wasn't necessarily something any judge is going to grant because if there's a mistrial, we got to start all over. We're talking about a new jury selection, opening statements. You got to bring Cassie Ventura back. And let's talk about what the basis for the mistrial was. You have an LAFD investigator, Jimenez, who was talking about fingerprints that were taken from Kid Cudi's home by LAPD officers. And that fingerprint card was destroyed. It no longer exists. So the investigator was not able to match any fingerprints from the Porsche to the fingerprints to the break-in. And I think what the prosecutors wanted to do is get out that evidence so the defense doesn't score any points on cross. What the defense argued, though, was because those fingerprints disappeared, somehow the government was implying that Combs, through his connections, his wealth, somehow made that evidence disappear. I think that was really a logical leap, to put it mildly, and
Okay.
a logical one more likely. And that's why the judge says, you know what, I'm just going to strike that evidence. It's not really relevant. Jurors, you're going to disregard it. We're going to move forward. No mistrial.
So, Neama, I want to talk about relevance, especially with regard to the entire kind of Kid Cudi episode here. Our colleague and friend, legal affairs journalist Megan Cuniff, she posted this photo from one of the exhibits in court, saying that jurors in the trial saw more photos today of Kid Cudi's burned Porsche convertible there in 2012. My question to you, Neama, is this. Diddy is not charged with trying to firebomb Kid Cudi's Porsche convertible. It is in the complaint. It's in the indictment. So what are they trying to establish here? I know it was included in the indictment, but it's not one of the charges. Is this a distraction? How is it relevant?
It's very relevant. And Megan's great. She's been covering these trials forever.
Oh, yeah.
So when you're talking about RICO, racketeering, you need a pattern of racketeering. So what does that mean? You need 2 or more RICO predicate acts within a 10-year period. So in this case, we've been talking about sex trafficking. But Andrew, there's many ways to get to RICO that don't even involve sex trafficking. So let's say the jurors believe that the freak-offs were consensual, that Cassie was a knowing and willing participant. She actually planned the freak-offs based on her text messages and emails. The government can still get a racketeering conviction if they prove 2 or more acts of arson, kidnapping, obstruction of justice, bribery, prostitution, witness intimidation. Those are also all RICO predicate acts. That's why the government is spending so much time on the arson. This is really a belt and suspenders type approach. So in case the jurors believe what the defense argued in its opening, that this was a swinger's lifestyle and Cassie was loving it and wanted to participate in these freak-offs and wished, and all the words that we heard her use in her own words and we saw in her emails and text messages, that doesn't mean that the government can't get a racketeering conviction.
So just some more details, because I think this is interesting here, about this episode. So this is what we know. The Molotov cocktail used to burn Kid Cudi's car in his Hollywood Hills driveway. It was fashioned out of a 40-ounce Old English 800 malt liquor bottle and a designer handkerchief. That's according to this witness, his name Lance Jimenez, an arson investigator for the LAFD, and these photos were shown in court here. Just, Neama, briefly back to the kind of mistrial attempt here. Do you anticipate that that will be used or deployed again? I mean, if you were prosecuting this or even defending Diddy, would you have it in your back pocket for a rainy day?
I would. And this is what good defense lawyers do. They're not just thinking about the trial, they're thinking about the appeal. And in Diddy's case, they're also thinking about a potential presidential pardon. We just talked about it with the Chrisleys. There are reports that that's something that Combs's lawyers are already working on behind the scenes. So that's what good attorneys do. So we're talking about the motion for mistrial today. We saw them trying to exclude some of Deontay Nash's testimony today to keep that out. Before the jurors walk in every day, there are these pretrial motions, and Judge Subramanian has to rule on it. And the defense is trying to make a record. Obviously, on one end, they want to keep everything out. But if something bad comes in and it potentially violates the rules of evidence and it's prejudicial to the defense, when this goes up on appeal, when Combs is convicted, the Second Circuit, three judges are going to be looking at that and saying, you know what? Should that evidence have come in? Did it result in an unfair trial to Combs? And if so, we may have to start this whole process over. So they are preserving that record for their client.
Okay, let's look ahead. We are kind of anticipating more testimony, this time from another victim who's going to go by the pseudonym Mia. This will be now the second victim since Cassie to take the stand here. And you and I have been talking about some of these victim statements, how the prosecution and the defense might approach them here. Let's talk about the burden for each briefly. What will the prosecution say? How will they approach that?
Well, Mia is important because not only she's a victim, she's a witness. So we heard today when Nash was testifying about this episode where Combs shows up to look for Cassie. He's really upset because she's not answering her phone and there's punching and kicking, and he hits her, and Cassie ends up hitting her head and getting a pretty severe gash right above her eyebrow. And this is something that she testified to earlier, that she had to go see a plastic surgeon because of this. So you have Nash testifying to this. Mia, a victim, is also there. She's another assistant. So we're going to hear her own trauma and her own abuse, physical abuse, and potentially sexual abuse as well. So that's going to come in. But she's also important as a percipient witness to some of these acts of violence that Cassie suffered. And I think that's going to be telling. And we're probably going to see her as early as tomorrow. We thought maybe we would get to her today, but I think that's testimony that everyone should be waiting for tomorrow, Thursday.
All right. Neama Rahmani, we'll talk then. Thanks so much, your insight into all of this, because there are so many details, so many twists and turns. It's very invaluable. Neama, thanks.
Of course, Andrew. Talk to you soon.